Drama has reached a fever pitch in the high desert as veteran actor Timothy Busfield finds himself hauled back into a New Mexico courtroom for a high-stakes detention hearing that has everyone talking. In a twist that has left the industry reeling, he stands accused of arguably the most damaging charges a public figure can face: the inappropriate touching of two underage actors on the set of The Cleaning Lady, a production filmed right there in the state. Tinseltown has weathered its fair share of controversies over the years, but the sheer shock value of this unfolding saga is something Hollywood has rarely witnessed in such a raw form. Timothy Busfield, the Emmy-winning darling and respected director whose familiar face charmed us all from 30-something to the classic Field of Dreams, is now withering under the unforgiving harsh glare of public scrutiny and scandal. Visibly shaken and defiant, Busfield made his stance crystal clear, stating, "I am going to confront these lies because they are horrible. They are all fabrications, and I absolutely did not do anything to those little boys." He doubled down on his defence, declaring, "I am going to fight it, and I am going to fight it with a great team, even as his freedom, his sterling reputation, and his decades-long career hang precariously in the balance at the centre of this grim criminal case." But he is not facing the firing squad alone. Standing firmly by his side is his wife, the 61-year-old television royalty and Little House on the Prairie icon, Melissa Gilbert, who has finally broken her silence in the hallowed halls of the court. This entire ordeal has morphed into a sensational tale of enduring love, fierce loyalty, and the looming terrifying consequences of the law, with roots that stretch back decades into the golden age of television. To understand the magnitude of this fall from grace, we have to look back at his beginnings in the spotlight, where a young talent was just starting to shine. Timothy Busfield, now 68 years old, hailed originally from Michigan, but he truly forged his identity and honed his craft on prestigious stages and silver screens across the nation, carving out a name for himself in the 1980s with a unique mix of range and quiet intensity. His journey took him from the bright lights of Broadway, starring in Brighton Beach Memoirs, as the understudy to Matthew Broderick way back in 1982, to establishing a massive pop culture footprint with the cult classic Revenge of the Nerds in 1984, playing roles that perfectly blended a sweet earnestness with surprising dramatic depth. But this ambitious star did not just stop at acting. He had his sights set on conquering every aspect of the entertainment machine. By the time the late 1980s and early 1990s rolled around, Busfield had secured his status as a heavyweight in television dramas, even snagging a coveted Emmy Award in 1991 for his unforgettable role on 30-something, the series that defined adult angst in America. He continued his ascent, appearing in beloved films like Field of Dreams before spiralling into a powerful second act behind the camera, calling the shots as a director. He was directing episodes all across network television while simultaneously building his own theatrical legacy with the B Street Theatre in Sacramento, a passion project he co-founded alongside his brother. However, the story of his partner, Melissa Gilbert, began even earlier and is perhaps even more ingrained in the American psyche. Born in the sprawling hills of Los Angeles on May 8, 1964, she became one of the most familiar faces to American audiences before she was even barely out of childhood. She was the girl who would grow up to become Laura Ingalls Wilder, the absolute heart and soul of the smash hit Little House on the Prairie. It is the stuff of legend that she managed to outshine more than 500 other young actresses to secure this life-changing role, embedding herself in the collective nostalgia of an entire generation of viewers forever. Little House dominated the airwaves through the 1970s and bled into the early 1980s, and Gilbert's real life became inextricably intertwined with the character who grew up on that dust-swept prairie. As she matured, she transitioned through adulthood with a fascinating mix of television, movies and roles that kept her in the tabloids and on the screen. From theatre to reality TV stints, writing books, and even taking charge as the president of the Screen Actors Guild from 2001 to 2005, she did it all. Her romantic life was just as headline-worthy. Her first marriage to actor Beau Brinkman in 1988 crashed and burned after 4 years, a chaotic period she later described as formative but incredibly turbulent. Then in 1995, she tied the knot with Bruce Boxleitner, the sci-fi heartthrob and television star with whom she welcomed 2 children, Michael and Meredith, into the world. That union lasted until 2011, leaving her navigating the world as a single mother and a woman all too familiar with the delicate, often painful balancing act between family fame and finding oneself. Meanwhile, Busfield's own romantic history was unfolding. His first marriage to Rada Delamata in 1984 produced children and a home life buzzing with artistic energy. It was a household infused with the intensity of a career in theatre and television. But the pressures of the industry eventually took their toll. That marriage dissolved in 1994, followed quickly by a second attempt at Forever with Jennifer Merwin in 1996, which also eventually crumbled into divorce. It was in the quiet, reflective aftermath of these broken chapters that their paths finally crossed in a meaningful way. The glittering Hollywood circuits they frequented, the industry galas, theatre premieres and collaborative sets brought them together first merely as colleagues and mutual admirers passing in the night. But in the wake of their previous failed marriages, both stars had developed a much deeper, more mature understanding of what relationships truly required. They learned the hard way how to balance love with independence, a demanding career with family needs, and a very public life with a private sanctuary. Their connection deepened significantly in 2012, almost as if fate was intervening at the exact moment when neither of them was actively looking for love. Busfield, who is newly single and focused on directing, and Gilbert, recently divorced and navigating the complexities of motherhood and a career in flux, suddenly found themselves drawn to one another in a magnetic way that completely transcended simple professional respect or friendship. Their bond evolved rapidly, turning from a supportive friendship into a whirlwind courtship that took the town by surprise. By the time their relationship was first splashed across the tabloids in 2013, it seemed like the perfect melding of 2 storied careers and 2 wounded hearts finding solace. They made it official on April 24th, 2013 at the legendary and storied San Isidro Ranch in Santa Barbara, California. It was a venue known for its sweeping gardens, historic cottages and discreet charm, where friends and family gathered quietly to witness a union that felt both timeless and cinematic. It felt as if the culmination of decades spent in the trenches of the entertainment industry had led them specifically to this single, radiant moment of happiness. Their lives quickly intertwined, not just personally, but creatively, as they made homes together, first in Howell, Michigan, embracing a quiet Midwestern existence, and later moving to the hustle of New York. Together they became a powerhouse team, producing and working on the film Guest Artist, a story that highlighted the very creative passion that fueled them. That shared passion had first drawn them together and eventually launched Grand River Productions, a company designed to nurture independent projects away from the studio system. Their goal was to offer mentorship to emerging talent, proving that they were ready to give back to the industry that made them stars. To the outside world, they played the Hollywood game to absolute perfection, masterfully walking that razor-thin line between feeding the paparazzi just enough and keeping their closed-door secrets strictly under wraps. Melissa Gilbert, who we all know will forever be America's sweetheart from her Little House on the Prairie days, knew exactly how to work her legacy, gracing us with carefully curated appearances at high-profile interviews, glitzy galas, and those must-attend award shows. She was rarely seen without Timothy Busfield on her arm, a man who wasn't just riding her coattails, but commanded respect in his own right, boasting a serious resume with heavy hitters like The West Wing and the cinematic classic Field of Dreams. Whether they were stunning the photographers on the red carpet, rubbing elbows in elite theatre crowds, or writing checks at exclusive charity benefits, they were the definition of a power couple. Every photo op and public outing was designed to sell a specific narrative, that of an unshakable Tinseltown dynasty built on decades of box office hits and the kind of personal grit that usually tears lesser couples apart. The fans absolutely ate it up because the chemistry was undeniable. He played the role of the distinguished seasoned auteur, perfectly dripping with that irresistible mix of serious artistic weight and easygoing charm. Meanwhile, she remained the eternal queen of the screen, a living legend, whose mere name is enough to trigger a wave of warm nostalgia and deep emotional connection for literally generations of viewers. From the outside looking in, their marriage looked like the ultimate script for success, a seamless blending of two massive careers that dominated both television screens and cinema marquees alike. It all seemed like a fairy tale that wouldn't end, but we all know Hollywood loves a plot twist. Behind the flashing lights of premieres and those cosy domestic Instagram posts, a much darker storyline was quietly starting to unravel. Let's talk about what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the shadows lengthen on set. The moment a director walks onto the soundstage, the entire atmosphere changes and the power dynamic shifts instantly. It is absolute monarchy where every actor, every grip, and even the lighting itself bends to the will of one person's specific and sometimes demanding creative vision. This was the kingdom Timothy Busfield ruled over throughout the early 2010s, having successfully leveraged his fame from 30-something and the West Wing to become a heavyweight shot caller behind the lens, not just a pretty face in front of it. He wasn't just winging it either. The man had a shiny Emmy Award on his shelf to remind everyone that he had paid his dues and knew exactly how the game was played. He made the calculated pivot from reciting lines to dictating them, taking full control of the narrative as a director and producer who shaped the story rather than just living inside it. But the plot really thickened around 2022, right before the scandalous headlines started blowing up our feeds, when Busfield signed on to pull the strings for the hit Fox series The Cleaning Lady, which was shooting down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This wasn't some small indie project. It was a gritty, high-stakes crime drama headlined by the stunning Elodie Yung that managed to grip audiences for 4 intense seasons. The production took full advantage of the backdrop, filming countless scenes against the stark, isolating beauty of the high desert in the American Southwest, a perfect setting for secrets. Busfield wasn't just visiting. He was running the show, directing multiple episodes and wielding the massive influence that comes with the title of executive producer. But here is the thing about being the boss on a TV set, especially when you throw young, impressionable talent into the mix. Authority goes way deeper than just who gets top billing on the call sheet. The director is the one who sets the entire vibe, creating an environment that supposedly relies on strict professionalism, ironclad discipline, and most dangerously, absolute trust. There is a reason child stars are surrounded by a swarm of guardians, set supervisors, and nervous production staff. Everyone knows the power dynamics on a Hollywood set can get incredibly intense and predatory in the blink of an eye. It is supposed to be the job of the adults in the room to guide the scene safely, give clear direction, and create a safe bubble where a performance can happen without crossing the line. To the cast, crew, and everyone buzzing around the backlot, Timothy Busfield wasn't just a director. He was the ultimate industry veteran, the guy comfortably gripping the megaphone and calling the shots like a true Hollywood heavy hitter. He was the one orchestrating that chaotic, high-stakes machine of creativity and strict discipline, navigating a brutal environment where time is money, stress is constant, and the expectations are always through the roof. Insiders whispering from behind the scenes described him as a seasoned pro who was genuinely well-liked, painting a picture of a man who commanded respect rather than demanding it. He was a figure whose decades of navigating Tinseltown gave serious weight to every decision he made, making his presence absolutely essential during the show's final dramatic seasons. But let's be real, wielding that kind of authority on a closed set is a double-edged sword. With that level of power comes immense responsibility and eventually the blinding spotlight of scrutiny. The real question everyone is asking is what happens when the person sitting in the director's chair, the one everyone is supposed to trust, becomes the subject of dark rumours. Heartwarming stories of mentorship and guidance can quickly twist into sinister tales of vulnerability, especially when the power dynamic involves impressionable minors. And in Hollywood, a ruthless world where golden reputations are fragile as glass and public perception can flip overnight, that terrifying tension is always lurking just beneath the surface. That simmering tension exploded into a full-blown tabloid headline late in the year 2024, shattering the production's quiet facade. It all started in November of that year when a concerned physician at the University of New Mexico Hospital picked up the phone and contacted authorities in Albuquerque, triggering a massive investigation into disturbing events allegedly happening on the set of The Cleaning Lady. The probe kicked off by that doctor's shocking report led investigators straight to the parents of two child actors who had a harrowing story to tell. These parents sat down with police, spilling everything they believed had gone down when their young sons were working on the show, painting a very different picture of life on set. Fast forward to January 2026, and this unfolding saga took its most dramatic and scandalous turn, yet leaving the industry reeling. The judge officially signed an arrest warrant for Busfield, slapping him with charges for inappropriate contact with a minor and one count of child abuse in the state of New Mexico. The bombshell charges focused on allegations that between November 2022 and the spring of 2024, while Busfield was directing episodes of The Cleaning Lady lines, were allegedly crossed. In the explosive court filings, the victims are shielded by mere initials to protect their privacy, but they didn't hold back when speaking to investigators, revealing that sketchy encounters right there on the set left them feeling deeply uncomfortable and unsafe. Now we have to pump the brakes for a split second because authorities have been emphasising at every single turn that these are currently just allegations and nothing has been legally proven in a court of law yet. We are talking about some truly explosive allegations that have officially escalated into formal criminal charges, though it is crucial to remember that the gavel has not dropped and absolutely nothing has been proven inside a courtroom yet. Busfield is furiously denying every single scrap of these accusations, even releasing a raw video statement where he insists he never touched those young minors. He is holding the line on his innocence, refusing to back down as he bunkers down to prepare for a massive legal showdown. His shark-like defence attorneys are already on the offensive, clapping back hard against the indictment by waving around their own independent investigations, which they claim will completely exonerate their client from this mess. Backed by studio heavyweights and dramatic polygraph tests that they insist completely vindicate his spin on the scandal. The reason this drama is absolutely exploding right now is simple. We are witnessing a legendary clash of egos with two unstoppable powerhouses going straight for the throat in a public showdown. It is the ultimate currency in Tinseltown, the absolute blind trust placed in the heavy hitters running the show. But darling, when the curtain falls and the dark rumours start swirling about how that power was really used, the bill comes due, and the price is absolutely devastating. We have all watched Hollywood try to clean up its act, sweating under the spotlight of a new era obsessed with safety and moral codes, especially after years of skeletons tumbling out of every closet in the hills regarding power imbalances. For months, the vibe down in the Albuquerque production was reportedly nothing but sunshine and smooth sailing, with cast and crew high-fiving over the show's continued smashing success, completely oblivious to the hurricane brewing just off-screen. But honey, the mood on set went from chill to chilling in a heartbeat when a bombshell investigation sparked by a very serious complaint from a concerned doctor and immediately relayed to law enforcement completely shattered the atmosphere and turned the production upside down. Just like that, the daily grind of scripts and craft services was overshadowed by the terrifying reality of police interrogations, with high-powered lawyers combing through hours of tapes and documents, turning a quiet hush-hush inquiry into a headline-grabbing public indictment faster than you can say cut. Fast forward to early January 2026, and the unthinkable happened. He had to face the music, turning himself into the Albuquerque police to satisfy the warrant and getting booked like a common criminal. The judge was not playing around, initially ordering Busfield to stay locked up without a single dime for bond, citing just how incredibly heavy the allegations were. Prosecutors were screaming about the potential risks involved and the disturbing nature of the claims, refusing to let him walk. The stage was set for a massive detention hearing, a real nail-biter, to decide if he would rot in a cell or breathe fresh air while waiting for the trial of the century. Listen for the industry insiders and the fans watching at home. This is way bigger than a docket number. It is a scandalous saga about what happens when massive fame collides with responsibility. You have to understand, directors like Busfield are the kings of the castle veterans with decades in the biz who are supposed to be the safe harbour for young talent navigating demanding schedules and emotional scenes. That creates an unbearable tension, a razor-thin line between artistic authority and public perception that grows sharper the moment that sacred trust is whispered to be broken. Whether Busfield walks free or gets the book thrown at him is up to the gavel. But let's be real, the drama has already torched his golden legacy. It forces a harsh, unforgiving spotlight on the dark underbelly of how the entertainment industry manages its powerful players and who it chooses to protect. Now let's get into the gritty details of the allegations and the arrest. We are talking about criminal contact with a minor, a phrase that describes behaviour that is light years past, crossing the line of professional set etiquette. And under the strict laws of New Mexico, every single count involving a child under the age of 13 is a nightmare scenario that carries the very real threat of hard prison time. Throw in a count of child abuse on top of that, and if the jury buys it, the maximum exposure could see him spending more than 10 long years behind cold steel bars. The prosecutors in Bernalillo County did not hesitate charging Busfield based on a complaint detailing alleged horrors that went down between November 2022 and spring 2024, all while the boys were right there on the set of The Cleaning Lady during filming in Albuquerque. The criminal complaint painted a timeline that started festering and brewing way before the warrant ever hit the gossip blogs or the evening news. According to the explosive police filings, the whole house of cards started tumbling in November 2024 when a sharp-eyed doctor at the University of New Mexico Hospital dropped a dime to the Albuquerque police. This happened after the parents rushed their kids in for treatment, absolutely terrified and expressing deep concerns about what might have gone down on that set. The parents were reportedly frantic, seeking medical advice after their son started showing heartbreaking symptoms that they feared were screaming of deep-seated trauma. The complaint reveals the most stomach-churning detail. One of the children, a mere 7 years old at the time of the first alleged incident, confided in a social worker that Busfield had acted completely inappropriately with him. And we're talking about multiple occasions claiming he was too petrified to speak up because he thought the big shot director would get angry at him. By the time early January 2026 rolled around, the investigation had heated up to a boiling point where prosecutors were convinced they had the goods to seek an arrest warrant. On January 13th, the game was up. Busfield, after getting the heads up about the warrant, swallowed his pride and turned himself in at the Metro Detention Center in Albuquerque, surrendering to the badge just like the order demanded. The media went into a frenzy airing footage of Busfield huddled at his attorney's office just moments before custody, defiantly telling reporters that he was ready to confront these lies head-on and asserting his side of the story. But defiance does not stop the process. Once booked, the Hollywood star was stripped of the glitz and held at the detention center in a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. His reality check came fast and furious the very next day, January 14th, 2026, when he was hauled before the 2nd Judicial District Court. Prosecutors went for blood, begging the judge to keep him locked up without bond due to the incredibly serious nature of the alleged offences. They waved filings around that contained what they described as detailed, disturbing accounts from the alleged victims backed up by medical observations. The judge bought it initially, and Busfield was ordered to stay put behind bars as the rusty wheels of the pre-trial process started grinding. What followed was an absolute media circus, a chaotic blur of frantic legal filings, desperate character statements, and the relentless, burning gaze of public scrutiny. And in the middle of this hurricane stood Melissa Gilbert, his wife of more than a decade and the beloved former child star of Little House on the Prairie. She was front and centre in the court gallery, looking visibly shattered and emotional as she watched the case against her husband move forward. The paparazzi and cameras didn't miss a beat, capturing every agonising moment of tension and heartbreaking tenderness in the courtroom. It was a chaotic scene as Melissa Gilbert was spotted clinging to supporters right outside the courthouse steps, while inside Tim Busfield's legal sharks were fighting tooth and nail for his freedom. The media frenzy was instantaneous, with everyone from mainstream giants like ABC News to the rock and roll journalists at Rolling Stone chronicling every sordid twist of this unfolding saga in real time. The headlines were absolutely screaming, ranging from dry, cold legal summaries to heart-wrenching, deep-dive features focusing on Melissa Gilbert's unwavering loyalty to her husband. Not to mention the devastating emotional wreckage this high-profile scandal has left in its wake for everyone involved. Social media platforms went absolutely nuclear with hot takes, wild speculation and warring narratives as fans expressed total shock that a Hollywood veteran with such a long career could be staring down the barrel of such horrific allegations, while the other side of the internet demanded justice for the alleged victims, reigniting the furious debate about power dynamics in Tinseltown. But make no mistake, his defence team didn't just stand there and deny the charges like a standard press release. They went on the offensive, launching a counterattack with enough vigour to make the tabloids spin. The defence dropped a bombshell claim that these disturbing allegations only surfaced after the boys were fired from the show, hinting heavily at a cash grab or a vendetta from the children's families. They even dragged the studio into the mix, pointing to an internal probe conducted by Warner Brothers Television, the heavy hitters behind the cleaning lady, which, according to the defence, came up completely empty-handed, finding zero evidence to back up the accuser's stories. Adding to the drama, Tim Busfield strapped himself to a polygraph machine and his attorneys are shouting from the rooftops that he passed with flying colours. But let's be real, polygraph results are rarely allowed in a court of law, so that move was likely played just to sway the court of public opinion. Pundits are tearing this apart, seeing it as the latest battleground in the culture war over how celebrity accusations are handled, while others are watching it like a soap opera. All eyes are glued to Melissa Gilbert, watching her navigate this nightmare as both the supportive spouse and a potential key witness in the trial. Then things got truly nasty when Busfield's legal team launched a savage attack on the character and credibility of the accuser's parents. They slapped court documents on the table, claiming this whole case isn't about child safety, but is actually rooted in a desperate desire for a payout. And they are airing out all the dirty laundry regarding the personal misconduct of the parents raising the twin boys at the centre of this storm. According to these explosive filings, the parents, Ronald Rhodey and Angela LaSalle, allegedly have a long, documented rap sheet of fraud and straight-up lying. The argument is that their shady history should be a major factor when weighing if their claims are even worth listening to, with Busfield's lawyers noting that Rhodis isn't just some random dad. The father of the alleged victims is actually a disgraced former attorney who did time after being convicted of federal conspiracy and wire fraud. And he was subsequently kicked out of the legal profession after that prosecution, which stemmed from a massive multi-million-dollar mortgage modification scam, where Rhodis and his cronies reportedly preyed on desperate, struggling homeowners by selling them fake promises of legal rescue. All while the country was drowning during the housing crisis. At least that is what the Department of Justice records are saying. In that specific case, he pleaded guilty back in June 2016, served 41 months behind bars and was ordered to cough up nearly $4 million. All in restitution for ripping off vulnerable clients who were just looking for mortgage relief, and the defence didn't stop there. They dug up civil judgments too. They threw shade at the boy's mother, LaSalle, citing allegations of dishonesty like writing bad cheques and messy financial disputes to paint a picture of a family in chaos. It is all part of a ruthless strategy to prove the family's integrity was completely trash long before they ever pointed a finger at the actor. Busfield's legal team doubled down, asserting that these dark accusations only materialised after the twins lost their sweet gig on the cleaning lady, and apparently only after they lawyered up with civil counsel, suggesting to the judge that the real motivation behind this criminal complaint might just be a cold, calculated move for financial gain or straight-up retaliation for the firing, rather than any genuine parental concern for the well-being of the children involved. Defence attorney Amber Fireberg stood up and argued that while the boys might be victims in this tragedy, they weren't victimised by Tim Busfield. She claims they were victimised by their own parents, a dad who can't practice law and a mom who can't float bad cheques anymore, who needed a new income stream, and then allegedly decided to manufacture victims to settle a score, arguing that the parents' sordid history of misconduct and their potential need for cash should absolutely influence how the court views these shocking allegations. The prosecutors, refusing to back down, fired back that the parents' past sins don't change the facts of the accusations and emphasised the hard evidence. They are leaning on independently gathered proof, including medical assessments and therapy records that back up the children's horror stories. But that fraud narrative, it has sparked a media wildfire, generating intense scepticism among commentators, legal analysts and the public. Now the conversation has shifted to discussing not just the charges against Tim Busfield, but the sketchy background of the accuser's parents and how that backstory might completely manipulate public perception and twist the legal process moving forward. The drama reached a fever pitch at a pre-trial detention hearing on January 20th, 2026, when a New Mexico judge dropped a massive ruling, deciding that Tim Busfield could walk free pending his trial under strict rules, stating that the prosecutors failed to prove beyond a doubt that keeping him locked up was the only way to ensure public safety, though the judge ordered him to stay on a tight leash under pre-trial supervision. He is stuck in Albuquerque, stripped of any firearms, banned from touching alcohol or drugs, and ordered to stay miles away from the alleged victims and their families. This ruling gave Busfield the golden ticket to walk out of that jail cell and head back to the comfort of his own home, even as the legal storm clouds continued to gather overhead. It completely flipped the script, transforming his situation from cold, hard confinement to a nail-biting, high-stakes legal limbo that promises to drag on for agonising months of uncertainty. Now all eyes are fixed on the upcoming preliminary hearing, which is the next major showdown to decide if there is enough probable cause to actually drag this mess to a full-blown trial. The court has already marked the calendar for that critical date. That session is going to be explosive, with evidence and testimony laid bare, determining once and for all if this scandal goes to a jury or gets tossed out before the main event even begins. But honey, there is way more at play here than just courtroom tactics and dusty law books. We're talking about the desperate emotional plea of a terrified wife. On January 16th, 2026, star Melissa Gilbert penned a gut-wrenching letter and sent it straight to the judge handling her hubby's case. This was not some stuffy legal document or a dry rebuttal to the nasty allegations. It was a raw, unfiltered outpouring of emotion that gave us a VIP peek into how she views the man currently staring down the darkest chapter of his life. Honestly, reading through it feels less like analysing a defence strategy and more like watching a tragic love story unfold while the paparazzi helicopters circle overhead. Gilbert gushed about Busfield, calling him my love, my rock, my partner in business and life, making it crystal clear that she knows the real man behind the headlines better than any tabloid or critic ever could. She emphasised that her intimacy with him goes deeper than anyone else's, hinting that the public narrative is getting it all wrong. She painted a picture of a saint talking up his infectious joy, his humour and his kindness, describing him as the absolute beating heart of their massive famous family, and a guy whose moral compass is as solid as his obsession with helping people. Her request to the judge was simple, but she hammered it home with the kind of emotional force that usually wins awards. She begged, please, please take care of my sweet husband, as he is my protector. I am his, but I cannot protect him now, admitting that the power dynamic had tragically shifted. She confessed that the hardest part of this whole nightmare was the heartbreaking realisation that she was powerless to shield him from the wolves, saying it was truly shattering her heart into pieces. And get this, Gilbert's letter wasn't the only one landing on the judge's desk. By the time the paperwork was filed, a whopping 75 handwritten or signed character references had flooded in to back Busfield up. The sheer volume of support was massive, stretching across every corner of his life. We are talking about everyone from childhood buddies who knew him way back in preschool and neighbours who watched him grow up, all the way to former co-stars from his glory days on TV and theatre pals. Each one offered a behind-the-scenes look at a character that, according to them, is the complete opposite of the monster described in the current allegations. The nostalgia factor was off the charts, with several veterans from the hit show 30-something stepping up as the loudest voices in the room. Big names like Polly Draper, Peter Horton, Mel Harris, Ken Olin, Patricia Wettig and Melanie Mayron all wrote to the judge swearing that Busfield is the ultimate professional and a genuinely good guy through and through. One colleague who has known him forever reminisced about filming scenes where Busfield, playing a dad in an on-screen family, handled everything with grace. They recalled how he played those tender moments with child actors decades ago, insisting these weren't just acting chops at work. They claimed it was proof of his natural ability to be present, caring and hyper-focused, even when the cameras weren't rolling in those high-pressure, emotional situations. These letters didn't just defend him, they painted a glowing portrait of a man defined by his generosity, his mentorship of young talent and his unshakable steadiness. Peter Horton's letter was a standout, noting that he has been tight with Busfield for nearly 4 decades. He made sure to emphasise that Busfield's legendary loyalty and integrity weren't just for show, they extended far beyond the studio lot. Another alum from the 30-something days wrote about how their own kids trusted Busfield implicitly during filming. They described him as a guy who checked his ego at the door to be fully present, bringing complete focus and a generous heart to every interaction. It wasn't just Hollywood elites rallying the troops. The family circle jumped into the fray too. Perhaps the most jaw-dropping endorsement came from Gilbert's eldest son, Michael Boxleitner, who declared that Busfield had been my hero, stepping up in ways that blew his biological father's role out of the water. Boxleitner described Busfield as a thoughtful, supportive anchor who helped mould him into the man he is today. His letter really shone a spotlight on the deep family bond, proving that Busfield's support system isn't just professional networking, it is personal and runs deep. Even Gilbert's mom, Barbara Gilbert Cowan, threw her hat in the ring with a touching note. She kept it simple but powerful, stating that the world is undeniably a better place with Timothy Busfield living in it. The deluge of letters also included shout-outs from former collaborators and crew members, all singing from the same hymn sheet. They described Busfield, the director, as someone who took the job seriously, a leader committed to safety and professionalism on set, and a mentor whose generous spirit launched dozens of careers. Now, this mountain of praise wasn't just for sentimental value. It played a huge practical strategy game inside the courtroom. You see, judges in these pre-trial detention hearings aren't just looking at the scary charges. They are weighing the defendant's character, their ties to the community, and whether they are a flight risk. Busfield's high-powered legal team pointed to this stack of 75 letters along with an independent studio investigation and a polygraph test they claim he passed with flying colours. They used all this ammo to argue that Busfield was safe to be released back into the wild while waiting for trial. But amidst all the legal manoeuvring, Gilbert's plea was the headline grabber because it was a story of love under extreme duress. She wrote about trying to balance cold logic with the whirlwind of feelings spinning inside her, detailing just how hard it was to pour all that raw emotion into a stiff legal document. This wasn't some rehearsed PR statement or a polished deposition prepped by a crisis manager. It was a wife standing before a judge, stripping away the celebrity facade to explain what her husband means to her, begging for mercy in a twisted moment where their usual roles had been completely turned upside down. It was a twist of irony straight out of a Hollywood script. The man famous for playing the protector suddenly found himself desperate for a shield. The curtains pulled back on the latest chapter of this Tinseltown drama on January 20th, 2026, right in the heated atmosphere of Bernalillo County, New Mexico. The prosecution came out swinging, practically begging the judge to lock Busfield up and throw away the key, screaming about the sheer gravity of these bombshell allegations. But Busfield's legal sharks weren't going down without a fight, clapping back with glowing character references and waving around results from independent studio investigations like golden tickets. They insisted those internal probes found absolutely zero dirt, nada zip, and reminded everyone that their client didn't run. He turned himself in like a gentleman earlier that month. One of their juiciest arguments, they pointed out the suspicious timing, asking why these scandalous accusations only crawled out of the woodwork eons after the cameras stopped rolling. And then there was the letter, Melissa Gilbert's desperate written plea, that became the centrepiece of their strategy to rewrite the narrative. She painted a picture of Busfield not as a predator, but as a saintly husband, a doting father and a mentor whose entire existence is apparently defined by sunshine and kindness. The tension in that courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. And when Gilbert appeared in the gallery, she was wearing her breaking heart right on her sleeve for everyone to see. When the judge finally dropped the gavel and ruled that Busfield could walk free pending trial, albeit on a very tight leash, Melissa looked like she was about to collapse from the sheer emotional overload. Gossip insiders in the room reported seeing the tears flowing freely and hearing quiet gasps of relief that you usually only catch in the movies she stars in. But let's be real, darling, walking out of a cell doesn't mean walking away from the mess. The dark cloud hanging over this power couple is far from clearing. We are looking at a grueling legal marathon that could drag on for months, starting with a status conference on February 4th, 2026, and endless hearings to see if there is even enough dirt to go to trial. If this circus does go to the main stage, the Wheel of Fortune could spin anywhere from a total dismissal to a career-ending guilty verdict. And if the gavel comes down hard, we are talking massive fines, probation, and potentially years rotting in a prison cell, a total nightmare scenario for the star. When you mix in the historical baggage of these charges and the sensitive age of the alleged victims, things get messy fast. Add the public's outrage to the mix and you have got a powder keg, making this arguably the most explosive, obsessive celebrity trial of the entire year. For Melissa Gilbert, the stakes could not be higher. This is not just legal manoeuvring, it is a personal battle for her reputation and her marriage. But here is the cold, hard truth. The justice system does not run on tearful letters or romance. It eats evidence for breakfast and spits out verdicts based on cold, hard rules. Still in a media frenzy this electric, you simply cannot ignore the human drama, the raw moral weight of a plea like hers. Testimony coming from someone who shares a bed and a life with the accused carries a heaviness that no high-priced lawyer or tabloid reporter can ever fake. Gilbert's letter was basically a war cry, a full-throated declaration from a wife claiming she knows the real Busfield better than any prosecutor or casual observer ever could. When you are dealing with scandals rocking famous dynasties, the spouse is usually the first casualty or the strongest weapon. A loyal partner standing by their man in the middle of a storm is more than just sentimental fluff. It is a strategic power move. It offers a rare glimpse behind the velvet rope, forcing the court and the public to see the human being behind the lurid headlines. Gilbert's words spotlight the brutal clash happening right now, the collision of undying love versus the cold hand of the law, intimate secrets versus public judgment. She is sending a signal loud and clear, not just to the judge, but to every fan and hater out there, that she is betting everything on his character and integrity. As the tabloids keep churning and the legal briefs pile up, the glare of the spotlight is going to get blindingly hot for everyone involved. The veteran director is staring down the barrel of some truly serious reputation-destroying accusations. The courts have to sift through the mud to find the truth, but right in the eye of the storm, Gilbert stands like a rock, refusing to waver. The next few dates are going to be absolute nail-biters, testing the limits of justice and blind loyalty, with the broken hearts of those closest to Busfield hanging in the balance. That is all the tea we have for today, folks. Thanks for tuning into the drama. Did you love this deep dive into the scandal? If you are living for these updates, smash that like button, drop your hot take in the comments and hit subscribe so you are always first in line for the next scoop. And honey, do not you dare click away. Yet the video on your screen right now reveals something even more shocking. You literally won't believe your eyes.